Good morning.
Coleman just called. Call you. Is he just waiting?
He's en route.
Is that all it is?
Should we go ahead?
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started on our workshop this morning. We're going to talk about the manager's goals, overview, next steps, and additional objectives. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council members, a little over a year ago, as part of my annual performance review, the council established 11 different goals. And those goals have formed sort of the basis for a huge amount of work that the staff has done, some of which has come before you and has been implemented, others are sort of a work in progress. But this morning we wanted to kind of review that work for you. Larry Hulse has sort of worked with the team of departments to prepare this report for you. I'm going to have Larry come up and kind of walk through that. It makes sense since Larry is also going to be your interim city manager that Larry do this so that he can kind of help you keep the ball rolling on these things. When Larry is done, I've got a piece I'm going to get up and talk a little bit about in terms of next steps. But let's first start with Larry. So you're on, Mr.
And I'm Larry Hulse, City Manager's Office, and go through the goals of the last year. I will say that they are intriguing because you look at the basic premise of all the goals, and it's really about customer service, about how to deal better services to the customers, how to use our workforce, how to keep our workforce engaged. This time, with Rick's goals, the council's directives to him, we went about it a little bit differently. We went about it with all the department heads forming teams, and each goal had a leader that worked on and thought through, discussed, researched, and came up with some conclusions on each of the goals. We also used it as an opportunity for have the department heads have retreats where we sat down for 2-3 hours at a time and worked through and talked through the goals and the different aspects of them. It worked pretty well because it allows the goals not only to be a work product in and of themselves, but to be a thought that gets ingrained in the way the departments do their work. We thought that worked very well. The teams right before you, a number of them, Rick mentioned 11, and a lot of them have to do with how we deal with customers again. First goal was employee investment, and that's actually been a great success. We've got 2 leadership type of academies, one the Leadership Academy and then the Supervisor Boot Camp, and we've had a number of great comments from employees. It's basically it's the best training that we have put together in the years people have been with the city. So we're going to continue that, expand it, try to get more opportunities for employees to become engaged. And there are some spin-offs from this one. We've often talked about succession planning, and this is certainly a tool that helps people get ready, get the tools they need in the organization to move forward in different career paths. And on the right is the team members, and James Wells was the leader of this group. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail. There was a lot of work done in all these groups. You might want to have workshops on some of these particular ones that you find most interesting. We are preparing written reports, but I'm just giving you a flavor of each team. The second one, led by Matt Anderson, I want to note the team. It doesn't have the cast of characters you would think of with municipal buildings necessarily. We really mixed up different people that would be working on the project. And a lot of the work was around getting people located in the best place to be located to do their jobs the most efficient. One of the things that happened in this building over the last 2 years actually was moving the city clerk's office to the downstairs position so that somebody coming to the clerk's office, and they get a lot of customers daily in and out. If somebody needs the elevator, they don't have to come in the door, go all the way down to the right, take the elevator up, come up to the second floor, take a tour of the second floor to come down to this end. Right now they're right at the entryway, and that has worked out very well for that work group. And it also freed up the second floor so that engineering can have their primary staff all working together in one area. We've also done a number of security improvements. We've finished the city manager's office reconfabulation. Did a little bit of everything with that, took care of the HVAC, asbestos flooring, and a number of efficiencies with how the office works. One last item I'll note is the police evidence storage area. It was a mess. It was just really embarrassing and not a good way to keep evidence the way it had been done for years, and that is done, and we're very happy about that. The next steps are to continue, and one of the biggest moves we'll be doing is moving into the Municipal Service Center. That will happen this summer and into the fall with a number of work groups in engineering and park and recreation, consolidating those operations a little bit more. But we really need to work, as the council has said many times, to move into phase 2 of the Municipal Service Center. The first phase is about 100,000 square feet. It's small compared to what the facility would need to be finished out. So that'll be certainly a goal that we'll be looking forward to for a number of years to make that move to get everybody consolidated.
Larry?
Yes, sir.
Since phase 2 is primarily Public Works, how come we don't have a team member from Public Works on that?
They are, this was overall on all the buildings, not just the Municipal Service Center. And Pat was a member of some other teams. Not everybody was on every team. It was who wanted to be on different teams. And you're exactly right. The next part of the Municipal Service Center is getting Public Works moved and consolidated in the same place. And I'll tell you what will be really nice about the Municipal Service Center. When you tour it, you'll see it as having a place where we have room to do repairs, to house trucks, all the things that sit outside now, which is really a shame for the cost we have into our inventory of moving stock. To have it in a facility and protected from the weather will be great. The wellness program, this has been a goal of the city councils for a number of times. I think every budget session we talk about the wellness program. Of our bargaining units, 3 now have in their contracts, as well as SPM, an incentive to do an assessment, wellness health assessment. And we've had pretty good, 53% of the eligible employees for that have gone through and participated in that program. And we plan to work hard the next year, 2 years. Actually, this is going to be an ongoing goal to get greater participation in wellness activities. One of the things that came out of the discussions on this group was a lot of people would like to bike to work, a lot of people like to run, but there are no locker rooms or place to have a shower or even store your gear at our city facilities. So that's something we've had some initial discussions on how we could do that for our employees. Scott Sanders led the ERP. That's, I think of it as the new PeopleSoft. It's what writes the checks, keeps the fiscal part of the city flowing. And that's been implemented successfully and under budget. There's a lot of functionality that is yet to be implemented. Work orders. Mayor, you talked about a dashboard when we were talking a few weeks ago. There is an opportunity to have a dashboard so that department heads can keep track of where they are at with their budget, with finance issues that are important to them. And that is one of the things that we're looking forward to probably in 2015. One of the things that I like is we're looking at replacing Tidemark. Tidemark is the permitting licensing that we use for dog licenses, inspection, building permits. It's a little long in the tooth, and it does not have the functionality that it could have or should have so that people could interact better with their permitting, and that's one of the projects we're looking to in the next year or 2. John Newman, actually John did a great job with his group. He had the longest report that he sent us, and to dig through it took actually had to be an IT person to understand the report in some cases. But they really went backwards and looked at what they do differently than what IT usually does. The team was a big team, different makeup, and they looked at what does the customer want from IT? What does the citizen want from IT? And they honed in very quickly on our website. Our website's very nice, has a lot of stuff. It's not very well organized, it's hard to find things. In fact, they did a little bit of a survey. Was our website easy to use? No. Did you find what you needed on our website? Yes, after some work. And they're also looking at the change to the way people get their information. It's no longer go to a website and search. They use the search engine itself, which changes the way we organize the website. as well as people use their phones. More and more are using apps. The mayor's task force, White House task force, the mayor helped them develop an app for their work. And more that's the way citizens want to engage and find their information. So a lot of the work will be simplifying citizen interactions in how they find information that we have posted on our website. And it'll be a different thinking, and one of the things that is throughout the report on our IT functions was using citizens to find out what they want, not what the organization wants. I pulled this out because I thought it was pretty interesting. Most visited web pages. The first one, you'd guess, the home page, by about 400,000 hits, the way it was measured. The next ones were the search, makes sense. Then park ticket payment, human resource job openings, park and rec, the parks, the home page and trails, then services in alphabetical order followed by the city directory. And so often we've put things on the website that we thought were important to people, and that's not always, it's good to have it so somebody can find it, but we got to make better use of how our front page works and simplify the activity for our citizens and others that use it. Succession planning, I touched upon that a little bit with our efforts to train our employees. The training is really important. When you come to a job, you do the job, you get very good at it, but you need to have exposure to the next level, the other things that happen in the whole organization. Mentoring is occurring in many of the departments where you'll follow what a supervisor does, understands the kind of things that run into their job every day. And those kind of things are very important, as well as simple things as updating job descriptions, organizational charts, and that's one of the things that the Position Review Committee is morphed into, is looking at organizations when opportunities arise to see if something else can be done within the organization that would make a better path for succession planning. Safety and security in public buildings. Since it's security, I can't say much about it. Well, that didn't go over very good, but this is one of the things that we did this year. We've all got badges.
Sorry, I'm still asleep.
The police have a better badge. There's glows, and you can see it very well. But this was one of the things we did, was change the way the doors open, the number of keys that are out there. This is how we get into the building. It'll be able to monitor who's in the building and when, especially on off hours, that's important. The next phase was security cameras. We have them deployed in the library system now. They work very well, and we need to start looking at City Hall and the other city buildings for better security for people that do business in the building. Sustainability, this is probably became the number one goal, if you want to know the truth. It's become more and more ingrained thanks to the mayor and the council's leadership, bringing these ideas into the organization, making them more mainstream, and I will say I think they've gotten that way. I've listed just a few of the things that we've worked on. The mayor, the baseline gas, I think they went through it. The plan is not done, but we do have the inventory after many years of trying to get that done. But one of the nice things that happened last week was the recognition that the city of Des Moines achieved 3-star community rating as far as our sustainability community-wide. This is not just the organization, but as a community. And we'll be doing a workshop fairly soon to go over that with you. It really gives us a good baseline to measure ourselves against other communities on how we're doing on different sustainability activities. The city's been part of the beta testing for the program. If I were going to describe it to you, it's like LEED is for buildings. This is, STAR is for communities, so you can measure yourself and know where you are on sustainability. The Tomorrow Plan, you've heard a lot about that, especially those that are on the MPO. And one of the goals was to implement it into the city's organization. We've kept all the departments aware of the plan as it went through. The different departments participated. And there are some pieces that are coming out of it. They're not quite gelled together yet, but they're coming along. One of them is in stormwater. The mayor's chair of the 4 Mile Creek watershed study, and there are other watersheds that are being looked at. It's regionalizing the way you look at a watershed, so a community at the top impact the community at the bottom, at least they know each other's needs and set up some rules on how that's governed. But there are some other government issues in that Des Moines is in many watersheds. And so, it's one of the things we're going to need to look at more of a greater regional look at some of the things besides just the watershed itself. The MPO is working on their 5-year transportation plan, which will incorporate many elements of the Tomorrow Plan. And for the city, the comprehensive plan, we held off on it a little bit to have the Tomorrow Plan done because there are principles in there that need to show up in everybody's comprehensive plans, and we plan to do that for the city of Des Moines. Economic development, you know this very well. At every workshop, whenever there's an opportunity to tell you about things that are happening on, I think, almost every one of your council agendas, there have been economic development type of items. This is very important. I know Rick will talk about it, but what we're finding is more and more we're seeing economic development in the neighborhoods besides the downtown. Just on Southeast 14th, Army Post, some of the items of the past couple of years, Southridge, Des Moines Area Community College, the Happy Joe's has been redeveloped into U.S. Cellular. The Godfathers, that was empty for a number of years, as an insurance office. Dunkin' Donuts, Buffalo Wild Wings, CVS, Osco, it was empty, I don't know how many years. I think my whole career here until this year when CVS went into that spot. Aldi's, the Melbourne Apartments, and of course interest at the Fort Des Moines restoration. A lot of activities are starting to take place in the neighborhoods, and that's really great. The City Development Office, I know that Rick will touch upon this. We've spent the year looking at how you do this. This is really reaching out differently than the way cities work. And we really think that it's important to have I guess you might call it centralized, but at least a strategic fundraising effort. Have somebody within the organization that can really direct and find projects and programs that we're doing and match them up with funding sources besides the general fund, wherever possible. What we have found over the years looking at it is that probably the best thing to have would be somebody like the Community Foundation be the fiscal agent for the project. And really we need to kick this off this next year and develop a list of projects. Rick uses the term catalog. Here are things the city would like to do, we just can't get done without some assistance, so that people could invest in the city in areas that they might be comfortable with. And that's the goals, the projects that we worked on in our groups. Again, I didn't read everybody that worked on it, but I think everybody here and then some can give you more detail than I can. Any of these that kind of hit a hot button or you're interested in, we'll be glad to do a detailed workshop in the next year, but almost all of these become goals that aren't done, that become ongoing focus areas for the city.
Is there a way, Larry, that we can get a copy of some of the dashboards that are going to be developed that relate to all of these goals?
So we can. It won't be a dashboard on the goals. That'll be a fiscal thing, but on the goals we'll have some summary reports we're putting together and we'll get those out to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Rick Clark. I'm the city manager for about 12 more days. I just counted them up.
And look at that smile.
Well, it's nice to be here. You all asked me to identify for you some of the things that I thought were the key next steps for the city to take. So I've spent some time talking to most of you and trying to sort through those things that are on our plate right now. Some of them are issues that Larry just talked about. Some of them are over and above and a little bit different from that. So I'm going to take a few minutes and kind of run through this list of things that I see. And then when we're done, any particular direction you want to give back to me in terms of what we try to get through the system in the next few days, we'd be happy to take that as well. So critical next step. And by the way, I'm low tech here, no PowerPoint, just an overhead camera, so we're going to keep this simple. First thing, Larry just went through these 11 goals. These are great goals. The staff has been energized by it, I think. A lot of the good things that have come through that clear identification by you of the goals that are important for the city, I think has really benefited the organization and the community. So sticking to those goals, following through with them, getting them all done and completed and wrapped up is important. Many of them, as you could tell from Larry's presentation, have a bit of a tail to them, so they're going to go on for a while, and they deserve that continued emphasis. Diversify revenues is clearly one of the things that we've talked about over and over again. You all know the key points here. We've cut $30 million from our general fund budget since I've been city manager. We've cut 320 positions. We have an ongoing structural deficit. Structural deficit is where your expenses increase at about 4% a year, your revenues at about 2%. So if you understand how the math works, every year that goes by, that structural deficit erodes your situation in terms of a balanced budget, and that's what's caused you to make all the significant cuts in your budget. It's that way basically because your revenue structure, the sources of revenue that support city government are not dynamic enough. They don't keep pace with expenses in any reasonable way. This is having profound effects on your ability to deliver services, although I must say, in my tenure, this organization has done a remarkable job of keeping services going. There's some stress lines around the organization as you look at what we're doing, but in terms of the general public, I think the general public continues to appreciate the services they get, and that shows up in your customer satisfaction surveys. So you've done a great job, but you're getting close to the end in terms of your ability to maneuver around this and keep services going. So it's clear to me that diversifying revenues, finding other ways to support local government is going to be critical for you. And by the way, we talk about it often in terms of its impact on operations, but it clearly impacts capital improvements as well. We're an older city for the state of Iowa. You have a lot of infrastructure here. In an area of sewers, you have sewer enterprises, storm and sanitary. You've done a great job in getting your sewer system back up, a lot of work to do there. But in other areas that aren't supported by specific utilities or enterprise accounts, where you have to use tax dollars in effect through bonds, it's really getting tough out there to maintain your parks and your streets and your municipal buildings and your libraries. Those are expensive things, and there simply has to be a way to get more money pumped into those sorts of things. And bottom line here is you absolutely need to have legislation that helps you do that. State law in Iowa is not particularly friendly to cities. It's been a challenge I think we've all felt over the years. But you have to continue to work with the legislature to find out the tweaks that need to be done that enable you to pursue other revenue sources more effectively here. So in my opinion, diversified revenues of all the issues we're talking about, if you don't solve this problem, it's going to continue to be very difficult to make this city operate at the level it's been. Now, if revenues continue to go down or don't increase as much, you'll have to keep cutting back, and that can happen. You'll still be here, but you won't be delivering the services you are today, and the city will become, I think, less effective and, frankly, a less desirable community to live in. So this is a critical issue. Downtown development, Larry touched on this a little bit. You have this really amazing situation right now. Just set them right there, Joyce, thank you. I sat down yesterday and tried to think of the number of projects that are in front of us right now downtown. There's over 15, and I probably am not privy to everything that's going on. 15 major projects in your downtown. I can't think of any time in the city's history, at least since I've been here, when there's been that much activity, that much potential for growth. So my comment about this, seize the moment. You've got to find a way to help all of these projects happen. Christine Hensley mentioned to me the other day, I think in session, should we be adding staff to do this so that we can accommodate all this growth and development? I can't quite get to the point of saying we should add staff to it, but I do think the council's support for these things and providing the direction to the organization that this work needs to be prioritized would be very important. Economic development work, of course, is carried out primarily by Matt Anderson and our OED staff, but it certainly touches many other departments. Legal department is heavily involved. critically involved in virtually all of the major projects, and they're very good at it, but they're stressed as well. And when you look at other organizations, other departments, their plates are pretty full. So the only way you're going to make this happen is to provide some overall direction to the staff that this has to be a priority for the city. Now, as you think about that, there's a corollary to this. And the corollary is that as the market heats up, as market demand goes up, the gap, the financing gap that has to be covered by public incentive of one form or another should reduce. Here's a perfect example. Housing is very strong downtown. 5 or 10 years ago, rental housing was renting at about $1 a square foot. Today, it's like $1.30. So when you see that phenomena going on, what it tells you is the gap amount, and we're gap financiers, the gap amount should reduce. And that means that the impact on financial incentives from the city ought to start to come down. I don't think quite the same phenomena is happening on the commercial side. I don't think commercial rental rates aren't going up very much. But on the housing side it is, and I think sooner or later commercial rates will go up. So in the foreseeable future, in my view, you're going to need to continue to underwrite some of the projects downtown, but you need to be attentive to the amount of money you're putting into the project. And I think look for those opportunities to reduce that incentive, which is ultimately going to save tax dollars. And by the way, the ultimate end state here is that the city doesn't have to participate in any of these projects. It is all market driven. You're not quite there yet, but that's really the ultimate goal down the line. You don't want to continue to have to put money into these projects. You only do it because it's necessary. So hopefully we're moving in the direction that those incentives that the city has to put into it will be lessened.
Rick, on that issue, I think that's really important because there have been a lot of changes that are impacting the bottom line for the developers, i.e. the property tax bill that's changed and what will be the impact on multifamily housing downtown. We went back and went from 5-year tax abatement back to 10-year tax abatement, plus you've got TIP. It would be very helpful if we could have a couple of examples of projects so that we could see exactly what's been the incentives now, especially with the property tax law change. And I'll guarantee it's probably not going to the tenants.
Your point is right on, Christine. Last legislative session, not the one this year, the one a year ago, the legislature reduced, you all know this, commercial rollbacks. So I think the actual commercial rollback between the credit and the actual rollback, there's about a 20% reduction in assessed values between the two. Well, that affects all the commercial property. That's a direct reduction in the amount of tax you pay, as long as you don't increase the rates. Even if you do a little bit, there's still going to be a reduction in the amount of taxes commercial property pays. Moreover, you also have another phenomena that goes on, we've talked about this a little bit, where the assessment process itself, that is the ability of property owners to contest what the county assessor says their property is worth, that process is starting to yield some fairly significant reductions in values, particularly in commercial properties downtown. Now, we have to follow the law. The assessor has to follow the law and make sure the properties are assessed properly based on their market value. But nonetheless, I think that's something that bears some scrutiny and some watching by the City Council. It's not your role to go and make those decisions, but you certainly are impacted by decisions that are made through that assessment process in terms of the taxes that people pay. Neighborhood funding strategy. I think it was maybe the last meeting, a meeting or two ago, the council approved the long-term neighborhood improvement strategy. This is the group that Russ Cross chaired. Mr. Moore, Ms. Hensley were both on that committee. A number of other citizens were. It's a good plan. It's a good start. But here's the thing. Here's the opportunity that's before you, I think. And that is because that whole initiative came to you really from the instigation on the part of the business community, I think it provides this opportunity for you to go back to the community at large, to the business community, and say, okay, we have this job in front of us. We know neighborhood improvements are important. We need more revenues to support that. And I think there's this opportunity to elevate that whole issue of neighborhoods and how you put money into it and where the money comes from, is to elevate that up to a higher level. And I'll tell you what, this council has done a remarkable job in recent years in keeping investments in neighborhoods high. You've continued to put $1 million a year into NFC, Neighborhood Finance Corporation. You've continued to put $1 million a year into NDC. You've used your dwindling CDBG dollars for neighborhood improvements. You invest some of your capital improvement money into infrastructure improvements within neighborhoods. So you're doing your part in that. There's really not a lot more capacity within the city's revenue sources to increase that number, and you're going to have to look for other ways to get that job done. But failure to get this job done, if our neighborhoods suffer from this whole process, if they're not kept up, then that will eventually harm the city. So I think you have this sort of point in time, this opportunity right now to really push this issue. And I think it was brought to you by Capitol Crossroads. Perhaps that was not where everybody wanted to see it end on their side, but it's right there, and you have this opportunity, I think, to raise that issue, elevate it a little bit, and maybe find some new ways, some innovative ways to get finances or funding into your neighborhoods. Funding for Municipal Service Center Phase 2. I must say, one of the more, I suppose I should say, surprising things that I've encountered here has been the huge support from this council for the Municipal Service Center project. These are tough projects to support politically. This is new building for city employees. This is a way to make the workforce look better. They're expensive things to do, but you've had the courage, frankly, to fund these kinds of projects. You've got phase 1 underway now. It's going to be a wonderful improvement, but there is a second phase, and that second phase needs to go forward. We don't have money in the budget right now for it, or very little. I think there's a little bit just to buy some land or continue to work on the design of it, but there's the construction money is not, it's not in our budgets because frankly we can't afford it. But I've talked to Scott Sanders, and I think Scott's got some really innovative ideas, and he doesn't have a magic wand either, but I think if you continue to look at this and continue to look for ways to see if it can be funded, it would be just terrific. And I think there are tangible benefits by consolidating your operations in one location. You can gain efficiencies there, service delivery will be better, cost of operation will be less. There's all kinds of benefits that fall out from that. So it is my fondest hope that you all can find a way to finance the phase 2 of it. And I think if you continue to put that on your plate and continue to look for ways to do it, that sooner or later you'll find a way to get that done. Flood protection systems, we've talked about this many times. It continues to be, for me, something that's critically important to our city. You all know the story. In early 2011, the Corps of Engineers came along with a study that said that our flood systems, our flood protection systems, our levees weren't sufficient to protect against the increasing amount of flooding that we're experiencing on our rivers. You, at that time, directed some funds be used to do some design work. So Jeb Brewer and his staff, working with others, identified a package of improvements that can be made to our flood protection systems, modifying bridges, modifying levees, doing different things along our river to increase the amount of protection that you have so that we meet those new standards that are coming our way. You have some funds in your budget, but here's the thing, here's the challenge for it, is you need the cooperation of the federal government, both through congressional action and through the Corps of Engineers actions, and at some point FEMA. And this has to happen relatively quickly, or you're going to have FEMA coming in here, remapping the city, identifying areas that need a higher level of flood insurance than they do today, and that will, I think, be a very chilling thing on the level of investment that you can have occur here. The mayor, again, has done just a wonderful job of getting the attention of the Corps. I think we'd be nowhere if it hadn't been for his efforts, frankly. And even as recently as last week, we were starting to get some indication that maybe we're moving that machinery a little bit to come your way. But it's been a very frustrating thing, getting the federal government to kind of get in our corner and help us do this. It must be a priority. You must find a way to get this done. Otherwise, you're going to have another big flood, you're going to have damage, and then all of the sort of the attendant negative things that go along with that when it happens in your city. It's not all doom and gloom, though. I must say, just a sort of a personal note, I was around in 1993 when one of the biggest floods, if not the biggest floods, hit our city. And since that time, there has been, frankly, an enormous amount of work that's gone on to make our city more resistant, more resilient against flooding. Those improvements are in place. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's somewhere in the range of $150 million of improvements that have occurred here. That's all been great work. You've got a little bit further to go to get the job done, to get your system where it needs to be, but it's really imperative that it happen. And it's a tough row. It's tough getting all those different pieces at the federal level together and aligned with you to allow it to happen, but it's an important priority. Shifting gears here a little bit, media communication strategy. I think you're all aware that how the city is perceived in the media, in the public realm, is really important to your ability to carry out an agenda. This city does so many great things that really never see the light of day. We struggle with this at the staff level. How do you get the story out there? How do you let the public know, your constituents, the great things that have happened here and that are happening? We haven't quite got that figured out exactly right. I think there's some improvement that can be done there. It has something to do with how we work with our media partners. I don't think we can view the media as adversaries. We need to view them as somebody that can help get our message out. And we have to figure out a way to sort of up-tempo our game there. What's suggested here is using some sort of consulting services to come in and sort of help you look at what we're doing. Is there a better way to manage that process so we can get ourselves in a little better position in terms of getting information out to the public about our city? But I think it's vitally important that this be done. I think we've made some improvements in recent years, but I think there's more to happen, more that could be done here to help our situation. Water board issues. The Des Moines Water Works appears to be sort of a turning point right now. They're looking at a number of different initiatives, but the thing of it is all these different initiatives impact the city of Des Moines in some fashion. Some of it could be positive, some of it could be negative, but the key thing here, I think, is that the city seek to work with Des Moines Water Works on these issues to make sure that your interests and your concerns and your needs are considered as they go through what appear to be some changes in terms of how they view themselves as either a city utility or regional utility or wherever all that ends up. I've listed here some of the issues, the regional governance concerns. There's discussion about trying to figure out a different way to set up a regional governance structure for the Des Moines Water Board. There are, second point, a number of different areas where the City of Des Moines and Water Works collaborate on service provision. These are very important to the city. Our staff over the years has developed a very close working relationship with Water Works, and that needs to be looked at and see if there's ways that we can preserve the benefits that have fallen out of that collaboration. Water infrastructure within the City of Des Moines. You have a capital improvement program, although it doesn't have enough money in it. You have a capital improvement program that every year you review, so you know what level of improvement you're making into our infrastructure that you own and control. I would suggest a similar sort of dialogue needs to take place with Water Board. They may have a wonderful water plan in terms of how they're going to improve the water infrastructure, the water lines within your city, but I think you need to know what that is and you need to be involved in it and help guide that to the extent you can. And the last point, payment in lieu of taxes. The Water Board pays the City of Des Moines, I think, $750,000 a year in payment in lieu of tax. It's a critical revenue stream for us. But there's an agreement that we have with them where that payment expires this year. There's an opportunity, I think, to get back with them and see if we can work that out to continue that particular revenue stream. So a number of issues with the City of Des Moines and Water Works. I think there's an opportunity here to have these all end up on the right side of the ledger. I believe they are more than willing to work with us, work with you on these issues. We just need to kind of take the initiative and do that. In a sort of a similar vein, it wasn't too many years ago that you all created the Des Moines Airport Authority. It had been a city department. It's now an authority. It's somewhat more independent from you, although you continue to own the asset, if you will. You appoint the authority, and they have all the independence they need in order to operate their systems. There have, however, been a few issues where they have gone a certain direction that I think the council has had some concerns about. And there's really no indication exactly how all those issues are going to resolve. I think the one thing you can do in the short term is to try to reach out to the airport authority a little bit more, work with them a bit. I've indicated here that there is a provision in our ordinance that created the airport authority for the city manager to appoint somebody to go to their meetings. You don't really get to vote, but you can sit there and monitor their meetings, and I think that should happen. And I've suggested here that the mayor and Councilmember Hensley perhaps would be interested in doing that, but that's sort of up to you. If you'd let me know what your thoughts are, I'd be happy to take that initiative. It is structured in the ordinance that the city manager does that designation, so, and I'm happy to do that, but of course I want to work with the mayor and all of you to make sure that that happens in a way that you're comfortable with it. But I think this is the time that you need to reach out and you need to try to make that relationship as strong as you possibly can. Pursue city-county combined dispatch. The city's radio system for dispatch operations is a great system, but it's old. There's a point in time when your communication system for public safety purposes is going to have to be replaced. Now, at the same time, frankly, given the great work of Chief Bradshaw and County Sheriff Bill McCarthy, those two are beginning to talk together about how we could perhaps do a combined dispatch system between the city and the county. That would be hugely significant. It has the opportunity to reduce your costs. It has the opportunity to do some things together that might ultimately reduce your operating costs. It is in my tenure, the first time I've seen this opportunity in front of the city in such a positive way. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that our police chief and the county sheriff seem to have the ability to work together. And that's a wonderful opportunity, and I hope that you all can take advantage of that in the coming years, because I think it would be a very meaningful thing for a whole lot of reasons, and not the least of which the idea of the city of Des Moines and the county sheriff working together, I think, is a great opportunity for all kinds of reasons. Maybe in the scope of things, one of the smaller issues, but I think important, and I'm going to give a lot of credit back to the mayor. When I first became city manager, we were just embarking on creating a lot of these major public spaces downtown. And the mayor took the position that, look, Rick, it's great to build these things, but how are you going to take care of them? Where's the maintenance come from that? And if there's not a conscientious effort to address the maintenance costs and provide for that, then it's going to default back to the city, and frankly, we can't afford to take on the level of maintenance for all of these wonderful public spaces we have downtown, like the Sculpture Park and Riverwalk and others. So there has been, in recent years, sort of an informal agreement, a cost sharing, if you will, between the City of Des Moines, Operation Downtown, which is the Schmid-funded activity under Glenn Lyon Shop, and then some money from Principal. And those funding sources have basically funded that activity, that maintenance activity, up until now. But now with Riverwalk being fully engaged, with these projects beginning to have a little bit more age to them, the cost of maintenance is a really critical issue. There is before you now an opportunity to renegotiate that agreement. My suggestion is that needs to happen, but there needs to be a significant contribution to that maintenance effort coming from the Operation Downtown program. Operation Downtown, the Schmid, those are basically tax dollars. Those tax dollars every year have to come in front of you for their review and approval. Now, in our case, the Operation Downtown folks have a great deal of latitude. They've done a wonderful job of coming up with budgets and operating that program. But you have an important part of this in terms of your review and approval of their budget. And I'm suggesting that as you do that, keep your eye on this issue of maintenance and make sure that within that program there are adequate dollars set aside to undertake the maintenance of these public spaces downtown. Otherwise, if it's not done properly, it will default back to you. You own them all. They represent a maintenance obligation. You can't just ignore them. But at the same time, if that responsibility becomes entirely yours, it'll be really, really difficult to assume that responsibility without hurting other areas of the city. So this is one of those little issues, but it's important. It's important to the city, important to the downtown, important for a whole lot of reasons that we come up with an agreement that funds this activity going forward. And I do think the critical player for the city is the Operation Downtown, because they control the Schmid dollars. It must have been 3 years ago or so, the council along with the Polk County Board of Supervisors, created the Homeless Coordinating Council. Chris Coleman chairs it, Mayor County, Christine Hensley, both are members. There's representatives from Polk County. That group has really done great work. They haven't been in the public eye too much, but they've really given a lot of focus and attention to the whole issue of homelessness. There's a good deal of work that's left to be done on this. But one of the key initiatives that group came up with, and that we've talked about here a little bit, has been the establishment of a homeless coordinator position. There is funds right now assigned in our budget using CDBG dollars to fund a homeless services coordinator, be a staff position that would allow all of that work to be reviewed and coordinated together. It's an important initiative. There's funding there to do it. But my encouragement to the staff and to you is that needs to happen. Otherwise, the homelessness issues are too complex and too broad to really effectively manage without some sort of coordinated effort where somebody is really assigned that responsibility to make sure that all those services are delivered in an appropriate way and funded appropriately as well. And homelessness continues to be an issue here. There's been wonderful improvements in our community, not the least of which is the new shelter. I say new, now it's a couple, 3 years old, but the CIS, Central Iowa Shelter and Services Building, is a wonderful facility, but there continues to be issues around homelessness in our city, and the demands on you, on our organization, on the whole community are going to continue to be there. And so having a position like this, I think, is very, very important. And there's a way to fund it with the block grant dollars. Human rights recommendations. I guess it was at least the last 6 months, maybe longer. There was a strategic plan that was put together under the direction of the Human Rights Commission. Council was involved in it. You had a number of joint meetings. I know this has been an issue that's been very critical to this council. You've spent a lot of time looking at human rights issues, trying to sort out how to make the program better and stronger. And there's all the issues around our budget and our difficulty in staffing it at a higher level. I understand all that, but you now have a strategic plan. You now have a Human Rights Commission that seems to be engaged in the issue. You have some actions on your agenda tonight, as a matter of fact, relating to the ordinance that would implement some of those key actions. This is just an issue, again, where you have this sort of point in time. You've done a lot of great work. You got a strategic plan. You got a commission that seems engaged. You're making some ordinance changes tonight, but you're going to have to watch this and follow through on it to make sure that it gets implemented appropriately. Again, maybe in the scope of all the issues in front of you, it doesn't rise to the very top of your pile, but it's an important one, and one that you've spent a good deal of time on in trying to figure out the right way to go about it. I just want to suggest to you that you stay focused on it and continue to monitor that activity to make sure it ends up in a place that is effective for our community. Sister City program is. The city has had a Sister City program for as long as I can remember. The mayor has spent a lot of time trying to figure out a way to get some other communities involved in that effort to make it a more effective program. I think that's a wonderful strategy to do that sort of thing. But Sister Cities is one of those programs that you're never going to be able to fund it at a real high level out of your own operating budget, yet it's one of those things that I think that's a real asset to the community and the organization. If for nothing more than the cultural exchange that can occur through the program. I know in my career I've benefited from some wonderful opportunities to visit with cities in other parts of the world, and it's really a great way to sort of enlighten yourself, and I think there's opportunities here that are good for the community at large and for the organization. So I just want to encourage you to stay focused on that program, see if there's ways we can make it better. And the basic thing is this. You fund it at a relatively low level in your operating budget. It's really difficult to put a lot of tax dollars into an activity like this, but I believe there's opportunities to raise some private dollars to help support it. We have a number of corporations and businesses in our community that have very robust international operations and have an interest and a knowledge and an ability to work in this arena. And my hope is that some of them would be willing to underwrite some of these activities a little bit to keep the program going and strong. But I think it's a great program. It's just been something that has been very challenged, I think, in recent years, and we haven't really gotten the best out of it that we possibly could. Maybe now's the time to try to get that up-tempoed a little bit. Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Code update, need to get it done. You've got money in your capital budget. It's an important, a very important initiative for you. Comprehensive Plan is something that if you don't stay after it and update it so often, it gets out of date and it's essentially useless. Once a comp plan is done, then the zoning ordinance has to be looked at to make sure that it matches the comprehensive plan. But this is a huge amount of work. And for that reason, you allocated some dollars in your capital budget to help support that activity. It'll take a couple years to do it, but it's going to take a huge effort and some real discipline to make sure you stay focused on it. Here's what traditionally happens on these kind of efforts. You start down the path, other issues come up, other work comes up, issues get referred back from this table back to the staff, and they set aside the comp plan work and they work on something else, and then you never seem to get it done. So in this instance, there has to be a real commitment to this task, to stay with it, to keep the resources committed there until it's fully completed. I think you've got the resources there. Now's the time to get this thing done. And last but not least, the council staff team. So one of the things that I think I've benefited from as much as anything as city manager is what I would characterize as a very positive work relationship between me, the staff, and this council. And I think a lot of that is because the mayor and I have been able to work together, and occasionally we have our differences, but I think when you get out to the public, to the issues that are important to the city, we're always together. So that team is really important to how you make this thing happen. But as you transition from me as city manager to somebody else, the whole matter of how the staff and the council interrelates is going to be important to you. It may seem like something that's just natural and doesn't require a lot of thought, but let me tell you, that's not the case. How you interact, how different inquiries that you have, how your priorities are reacted to by the staff, how your day-to-day requests that come to the city and how we manage those things, how you interact with staff, all those things are important. And it bears some sitting down and thinking about that and just making sure that you're all comfortable with how that works. There's no perfect way to do it, but there are better ways than others. And clearly, the important thing is to have everybody on the same page in terms of how that works and what's appropriate and what's not. And one of the things, the second bullet up there, review and update city goals. Gosh, I don't remember how long it was, 6 or 7 years ago. I hadn't been city manager very long, and some of you that were on the council at the time will remember the retreat we had. It was over at the East Side Library. We spent like half a day or a couple days, and you went through and you identified 10 or 12 goals for the city. And then we have that little card that you're sitting around on my desk occasionally, the places, those 10 goals. Very generally stated. But you know what's interesting about that? The staff has continued to refer to those things over the time, and so has the public. So as simple as that process was, the identification of goals that you thought were important for the city has really been helpful. But it's been a long time since you've done it. You've got some new council members around this table that weren't there at the time. I'd suggest as you get a new city manager and you sit down and you figure out where you're going to go next, take some time to do that kind of a process again. There's different ways to approach it, but at the end of the day, if you have a set of common goals that you are working towards, it's very, very powerful. And we spent most of the morning so far talking about goals, but clearly you need to put your own stamp and your own input into that and come up with what you think are the important goals and strategies for the city. And the more you can do that sort of thing and work out your protocols for how you interact with one another, the stronger and better you're going to be. Mr. Mayor and council members, that concludes what I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Anybody have anything?
I'd like to have you stay and help us finish all those.
There's a phone call and email.
Mayor, I did have a couple of comments if I could.
Please.
You know, with the Personnel Committee talked about asking Rick to stay updated, and when he agreed to stay to the end of May, which was some question. I think when you first announced your retirement, you thought maybe the end of February or March. I can't remember exactly when. We wanted to stay up to date on that. And I will tell you, as one guy watching this, I'm really impressed with what staff's done the last 5 or 6 months in pushing forward on some of these goals, and I feel really, really good about it. Are you, take care.
I made a copy of my notes, such as they are, so I want to make sure.
So there's a couple of things that you talked about, Rick, that I think in the next 12 days, we can still make some progress on. And it strikes me that the city council doesn't just hire you, but we have a city manager to keep, the mechanisms of government moving forward. And I know we can't take action today, but here's, I wrote down some thoughts as you were going through your list. And I think this transition between you to Larry and Larry to a permanent city manager is really important. And I think it would be helpful for the council for you to take your, what do you call those things that they used to do in school where you had it wasn't a PowerPoint, where they had like the little flip thing?
Overhead?
An overhead, before the overhead. Yeah, one of those real old-fashioned things that you did up here in your presentation.
Well, you know what, it worked.
It did work. It would be helpful, I think, for me and the council, for you to kind of memorialize that in a letter, and as you leave next Friday, use the power of your office to continue to push these forward. I know that a lot of these we haven't taken action on, but your office can certainly make sure that these live on. And what I don't want it to do is for us to create a new direction and start moving away from our goal. You could, assign your staff certain duties. Maybe there's deadlines that you establish for your staff to report back to council. Things that the next city manager would kind of inherit that are already underway. There were a couple of things where you said, we need to make sure that's in next year's budget. And I think even establishing a process so that those things that we've gone through, not any surprises, but those things that we've gone through are somehow on the council agenda and radar screen next fall as we're working on our budget. That you put that in writing, both for the staff's purpose and for us. I particularly just want to highlight a couple of things that are important to me. And a couple of these are things that you can do in the coming 12 days. Ty and Larry's presentation about communicating with our constituents, new tools, mobile technology, social media, everything, and your comments about our communication strategy with the media and others. I think there's a chance to really move that forward in short order, and I think you have a vision for that. I think it's really important that we have a little transition time with you and the designee to the airport board. I personally think that it should be something that we ask the mayor to spend some time on. It's one of the priorities that we've heard from the citizens, and Christine could be named as an alternate, so we always have somebody there. I can't think of anything that's brought more frustration to as many citizens as the amount of money that our citizens spend on communication systems, different ones at the county and the city, sheriff, police, and as you leave, recognizing that, being able to embed that in a real high priority with the chief that's already working on it, I think that would be great. This issue of the waterworks, I think is huge. You've suggested, I think, to many of us that Jeff has the kind of perspective to be our lead or official communication link to that, so we're getting consistent information. And I think that would be great to somehow acknowledge before you go, so that there's a clear line of communication once you're gone. You mentioned the Homeless Coordinating Council. We have that money, we have it reserved, and we have to move on it. And I would love to see, before you left, a timeline over a couple of months on what the comp plan is going to be. Our neighborhood leaders, especially that watch this stuff, are really anxious for that to make progress. So it would be helpful, I think, for us to be able to show people the markers, by the end of September, we're going to have this, by the end of, whatever it is. But I think that would be helpful. So both memorializing your slides and taking the opportunity to do that in a way that establishes some benchmarks is a strong recommendation that I have.
By the way, it was 12 days, not 12 years.
Oh, did I say 12 years? That's a lot of work, I know.
Yeah. If I could, Mr. Mayor, just respond to Mr. Coleman's comment. I'm happy to do this, but what I'd want to do is work with Mr. Holz on it, because Mr. Holz is going to be sitting in this chair in a couple of weeks, and you want to provide some continuity. So maybe Larry and I can kind of put our heads together and kind of work through that list in the way you suggest.
Perfect.
Anything else?
I think he's leaving a week from Friday.
It's a week from Friday.
Did I say Friday?
You said next Friday. You keep trying to get rid of it.
I know.
Anything else? Anybody? Rick, thank you. This, I think, is going to be your last meeting that you have with us in this format, in these workshops, and I want to thank you for helping us coordinate these from the very outset, and also to staying on top of it, and in this case, Bob, for helping to coordinate the agendas moving forward. And we have made it the responsibility of the Mayor Pro Tem to sort of keep an eye on that. So thank you for doing that. But Rick, I think that your sense for the communication that's needed between this council and staff, and certainly the city manager being the major link between this body and these two bodies, actually, has really been brought to a new and different level under your leadership. So I want to thank you for your leadership in this regard. Let's quickly open it up to see if there's any comments from the public today. Quite a bit of ground actually has been covered this morning.
Are we supposed to have an update on
Yeah, didn't we have another?
the city
agenda?
manager process?
Mr. Wells back there.
I knew we had some.
Let's do that.
Good morning, Council, Mr. Mayor. James Wells, Human Resources Director. Yes, this morning I'm providing an update on the city manager search. As you see on maybe you see it on your monitor, this is the timeline that we've kind of been working off since we kicked off the process. We are still on schedule, fortunately. So now the job has been posted for a little over 3 weeks. Mr. Mercer with the Mercer Group did kind of start the search a little bit prior to when we actually posted the job on our website. He sent out some communication to those that might be interested to look out for this opening. So to date, like I say, the job has been posted on our website for a little over 3 weeks. The Mercer Group has also placed ads in several publications where candidates and sources of candidates would look. Those include, I'll just list off some, of course, the city's website, the Mercer Group website, Careers in Government, the International City Managers Association, governmentjobs.com, Nations Cities Weekly, the International Hispanic Network, Women in Government, National Forum for Black Public Administrators, and also the Iowa League of Cities. In addition to that, as Mr. Mercer said he would do, he's also done some direct mailing to candidates and sources of candidates. According to an update that he provided us, he has mailed about 600 of those letters to candidates, and again, sources of candidates, those people who may know of qualified candidates. Jim has stated that he is receiving applications from highly qualified individuals. However, he's not provided a number at this point. The next steps, as you see there on the timeline, May 28th, so a week from Wednesday, I believe that is, Jim will kind of begin his first cut or his first review of the applications received. Then on Friday, June 6th, he'll come on site and go over his findings with the council here in the council chambers. It sounds like everyone is available to participate in that.
Did that move from the 5th?
It did,
Okay, when did that move?
last week.
Okay.
So that would be,
And what time on the 6th?
so we have the room scheduled or reserved for the entire morning, so it's kind of whatever would work for the council, 8:30. Jim is expecting he would need a couple hours of your time.
I thought it was on Monday. Why did it move to the 6th?
Should we move it around?
Okay.
Like
So from
this
Thursday to
week?
Friday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I missed that, sorry.
All right. So after that, if council feels as if they can move forward with the candidates that Jim has presented, then on-site interviews will be scheduled for the week of June, I think it's 16th. And after talking with council members on dates, it sounds like maybe the 17th and 18th are probably the best 2 days for those interviews. And then I think beyond that, it's kind of working on the format of the interviews, trying to nail that down.
I would suggest we meet early that morning.
Sure. 8, earlier,
7:30?
7:30? Okay,
7:30 would work for me.
all right.
James, you might want to make sure that everybody's good with that June 6th date, is that?
I guess that was in a letter that Jim sent?
No,
It was, I think.
I sent out, well, it was in the letter, but it was after I communicated with council that the 6th would be better, would be a better date. So from Thursday to Friday.
Okay.
I mean, the date came from me to Jim, and then Jim included that in his update.
It's important that you can all be there.
7:30 a.m.?
If that works for council, sure.
Okay. On June 16th and 18th, can you talk a little bit about the timeline and how that works? Because I know the mayor's been requested, United Way is having a evening of the 16th and an all-day 17th event that they really want the city to be involved in.
Sure. So we could structure it so that, I mean, it then depends a little bit on the format of those interviews. So if there are going to be some panel interviews, let's say, with staff, and if there are other stakeholders that will participate, I'm assuming there will be some sort of public reception, and then, of course, interviews with the council. And so we can base the timing of each of those events on your schedules. If the 17th, which would be a Tuesday, if that day is reserved for other events, then we can do those activities that don't include council on the 17th, maybe the reception on the evening of the 17th, and then interviews on the 18th. If that's an option.
So go ahead, say that again?
So if we did those activities that council's not,
Involved
doesn't
with
participate,
that would be all day on
involved
the 6th?
on the 17th,
17th,
and
okay.
then maybe a public reception that evening,
Okay.
and then interviews then starting in the morning of the 18th.
Anybody else have any questions?
That works for me.
That works.
Bill, Skip, Bob? All right.
So
Joe?
then,
We're good.
That
So
would-
the 18th, right?
all day on the 18th will be tied up.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, since nobody jumped up on our first request for public comment, unless I see somebody jump up immediately, let's declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.